were here long before any other man was here. Our origin begins here. As two-legged, we came into this world through a hole called Winnie Cave.
We are connected with certain areas of land that we look upon as holy, as sacred ground to us, from which flows our spiritual power and our identity as a people.
The Black Hills represents all that is good and all that is sacred to the Lakota people. And you can look around you and you can see that sacredness.
When we were put on reservations, we were banned from coming here and practicing our way of life.
The Black Hills is our place of worship, and it's much the same way as Israel is to the Palestinians and to the Jewish people. It's the same way as the Vatican is to the Roman Catholic. This is our Holy Land.
The Lakota people know from experience that Mother Earth talks to us. And at this point, my grandmother has tears running down her face, knowing that she's being ravaged.
The white man's crazy. He thinks he owns the Black Hills. He'll never own them.
They give you all kinds of acts that they did, how they broke the treaties, how they did this. But it all boils down to is they stole them. They're thieves. This is where you're supposed to be attuned to the Great Spirit, not to just amuse yourself and gratify your wishes.
There's no reason why we have to continue to be the poorest people in this country. It's not justice. To take away our life, our sacred homelands, and in exchange give us poverty entitlement programs or welfare programs. We seek justice. And we seek recognition of our spirituality.
If you can see beyond the fences, if you can see beyond the tourist signs, if you can see beyond the development, the rape that has taken place, you can see that the Black Hills were taken illegally. On a political level, it represents basically the last stand, the last. If we lose the Black Hills, we cease to exist as a people.
We were once a great nation that had the highest ideals and virtues and spirituality.
Lakota, that's our name. Lakota means people together.
When we met in the great camp circle where all the tribes or bands came together, a man of good character was selected as the historian of the tribe. This historian would ask what certain event of the year was notable, and he'd add it to his circle of years, or a winter count. And this is what they use to remember events that came up on them, like smallpox. And they could count forward and backward from certain events and say, well, so-and-so must be this many years old now because he was born in the winter when this happened. Red Cloud counted his years from a certain star at that time.
As Lakota people, this is where we started. We didn't come from the Bering Strait, and our stars have legends that tell us that we were always here.
We came from the Star Nation. They brought the people down to under the surface of the earth to await the creation to finish. When they first came up, they saw that it's really a beautiful place. The Great Spirit, he told them that you can't be a semi-divine anymore, but you can talk to the spirits. Everything on the earth, you can talk to it. And even the rocks, you can talk to them. And that's how we get our knowledge, is from listening to Mother Earth.
Through the help of the spirits and through the help of the animals, we found a way to live on the surface of the earth. So this is why we say that we're relatives to everything that's alive. We're relatives to everything that lives, to the four-legged, and the two-legged, the winged, and the growing things. We're relatives.
There's no other animal that can match what the buffalo gave to our people. He gave us life. My grandfather used to tell me that from that point over here to that point over here, they was 7 miles wide of buffalo and 10 miles long.
It wasn't, as most people like to think, that the Lakotas were aimlessly following the buffalo. I mean, both the two-legged and the four-legged had to be in that particular region at that particular time. At certain point, like in the summer solstice, they have to be at a certain place, which would be the opposite of where they should be during the winter solstice.
The buffalo would sacrifice themselves so that we would have food. I'm not a warrior, but I've heard stories that all you need is one arrow to kill that buffalo because it's coming from your heart. The Wachante Obinake means it comes from your heart. You put it in your heart, so you get your bow and your arrow, and then you just pray with it. And all you need is one to down the buffalo because that's our source of life.
The extermination of the buffalo began with the buffalo hide hunters. There was thousands and thousands of buffalo hunters that came upon the plains and through the North Platte with their wagons and just slaughtered the buffalo. They skinned the buffaloes on the prairies, left the meat to rot, took the choice meat of just the tongue and the buffalo hides, and they were selling for $2 a hide.
They try to get rid of Lakota people because the buffalo is everything for them, hide to bone. They use every bit of it. So Washington people, the white men say, hey, we get rid of the buffaloes and we'll starve the Lakota people.
There were 60 million buffalo, and in 60 years, They were almost totally wiped out, down to a few hundred. That's an amazing statistic that happened in this country. 60 years, 60 million buffalo. That's 1 million buffalo a year to be killed. That's what this country did in order to pacify the Plains Indians.
Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull, two of the greatest leaders of the Lakota Nation, were killed. They were politically assassinated. And in my mind and in our people's thinking, it was because they were the two greatest leaders that could pose the most resistance to the taking of our sacred homelands.
You come across a prairie where it's dry and hot, and all of a sudden you come to the Black Hills and it's just beautiful here.
The Black Hills serves as a central location for our survival, our way of life. Everything comes from here. The roots, the herbs, the plant life, the animal life, all that was found here. It's like today's commissary, today's supermarket.
We belong to the earth as much as children belong to their mother or to their parents.
Around this whole area, the Black Hills, there's a sacred path. It's kind of a red valley, and it's called the Chakaleshka, or the sacred hoop. And this was caused by the animals that were racing around the Black Hills. They shed their blood. The spirits thought this was a very great thing for them to do, so they decided to preserve it that way. We still follow that path, or we try to in our lives, this sacred hoop.
Our whole life is a ritual, it's a ceremony. It's practiced and lived with songs and prayers. The Black Hills represents life. The Black Hills also serves as the graveyard. Everything at one time lives, and everything goes back into this ground where power is derived from.
They took a picture of the Black Hills from NASA, from one of the space shuttles, and they looked at it, and it was shaped, the Black Hills is shaped like a human heart. And so that's why they call it Chante, that means our heart. And so this is the heart of our nation, and this is the heart of Mother Earth.
The Makoche Hochokata, the highest peak in the Black Hills, was a place of vision, of fasting, seeking solitude, talking to Wakantanka, which is a very awesome experience of being able to relate directly to our Creator.
Bear Butte, the Paha, they call it, Lakota people. It's a place of worship, a place where you stand without food and water to cry for a vision.
We get on top of the hill, and then we put tobacco ties around where we're standing, and then we stand in the middle with nothing, the most humblest way. because it's just you and the Creator and the Black Hills. And then you pray, you send your voice up to Him and you ask for help. And then if you're really sincere about it, then you will get a vision and you will get help from the Creator.
Bear Butte to the Cheyennes is like Mount Sinai is to the Hebrews, where the covenant was gotten by Moses. Well, our covenant was gotten here at Bear Butte. Our prophet, Sweet Medicine, he went inside to be instructed. And for 4 years, he remained inside Bear Butte. He brought forth our sacred symbol of sustenance and protection, the arrows.
The Mato Tipila was a place where the entire nation would gather to dance the Sundance. They would go through this ceremony, a time of cleansing, a time of sacrifice, and make commitments to bear the burdens of the people. Remember the orphans, remember the elderly, remember the handicapped, remember the helpless ones, and make commitments to themselves to take care of our people.
We pray for 4 days and 4 nights without food and water. It's a ceremony that we do for not only us Ikjerichasha as Lakotas, but for everybody, the whole world. When the men pierce, they pierce with the buffalo bone. And the significant meaning to that is they have to be reborn. And in order to be reborn, and in order to fulfill their vow to the Creator, they have to pierce themselves right here on their chest with 2 buffalo bones, and then they tie it to a leather thong, and then that gets hooked up to the tree of life. And then they dance, then they go up to the tree 4 times, then they pray, and they ask to be born again. They're saying, Wakantanka unshi malayo, Creator, have pity on me. I want to live. That's why I'm doing this. Wani wa chincha lechamu. And then they touch the tree 4 times, and then their bones come apart. That flesh tears open. Then they bleed, and then they're born again.
We know from our elders that there was a time in our history when we didn't have to worry. We had the access to the hills, and it was the spiritual center of our people.
At that time it was free. We could go to these hills, go in a place where we feel free. Now you got to pay to go into these places. You have to pay. I don't feel right about that.
I feel it's wrong when you go through park entrances because they're charging us fees to go into our own land.
It's a matter of getting to be able to pray there in the holy ground, the holy mountain, Bear Butte, to be able to get to it is what's kind of discouraging, kind of frustrating.
Today you go up there, just like going to some museum.
People have to tell the rangers ahead of time that they're coming and how many are coming to perform ceremonies. And then the rangers, they kind of sometimes laugh you off and say you can't do that.
I recall that one medicine man was going to get some medicine and said, you got to have a pass, you got to have a permit to go out there.
There seems to be a web of intricately complex bureaucracies, which are, in my opinion, are direct interference with spirituality. Filling out of forms and getting lease permits, in a sense, it's a real deprivation of our spiritual ways.
The best that we can do is hope that the United States government can be respectful and allow us access at those sites without having to stop and go through the bureaucratic process. It's dehumanizing, it's a desecration, it's a violation. I feel all of that.
Our prophet, Sweet Medicine, told the Cheyennes that there's going to be a white package coming among you. And because of that white package, you're going to always be in a hurry. You're going to be restless. Try not to be that way. Try not to live that way. I don't know how long this white package was among the Cheyennes until the elders recognized the white man. Here is the white package.
The white people are coming in, covered wagons, all these. And we have land, Black Hills, and other places. We call it Indian Territory. We take care of that. That's where we are them days.
Well, the United States government wanted to protect settlers traveling down the Holy Road or the Mormon Trail. So they got all the Indian tribes in the upper Midwest to come to Fort Laramie and sign a treaty.
Well, the 1851 treaty was like most of the 371 treaties made by the United States government with Indian nations. It was a treaty of peace. They wanted peace so that their citizens from the United States of America could travel west through our country unmolested. And we said, sure, no problem, as long as they don't stop.
The 1851 Fort Laramie Treaty defined the territory of the respective tribes. The Sioux tribes were recognized as owning about 60 million acres, and the Indians on their part agreed that they would not attack settlers traveling down the trail.
We didn't mind them taking the southern route through our territory over the wide expanse of the Kansas and Nebraska plains. But when they started going to Montana for gold and striking right through the heart of our country that we shared, of course, with the Cheyenne and the Arapaho, well, we said, no more.
So we fight for our land, our rights.
Chief Red Cloud led the Lakotas in a series of victories against the U.S. military. And it was then concluded that the U.S. government would send out a treaty commission. And on April 29th of 1868, a treaty was concluded with the Sioux Nation, or the Lakota people. And it was not a surrender document. It was a peace agreement. It was agreed that essentially western South Dakota would be set aside for the undisturbed and absolute use for the Lakota people.
What the treaty did was grant title to the Sioux Indians under United States law. It established the permanent Sioux reservation, which included the Black Hills.
The treaty was signed with the understanding that the United States government wanted peace, and they came on their hands and knees and begged for it. Many of the leaders signed it, and just as many, or perhaps more, didn't want to become part of that. Whatever the case was, it was signed, and the pipe was smoked. The Lakotas gave the word that they will never break it.
We pledged our honor to keep these obligations within this treaty. And our word was all that was necessary. It was sacred. And U.S. government's apparent motives, revealed later, was that it was their method of depriving us legally through their system of our property and our rights. It was a treaty made to be broken.
It wasn't but 5 years later when George Armstrong Custer illegally led a gold-seeking expedition into the Black Hills. And that was the beginning of the end of our formal possession of our Holy Land.
Custer gave glowing reports about gold discoveries in the Black Hills, timber, mineral resources, land suitable for agriculture and ranching.
When this made national news, there was a gold rush. Miners and settlers rushed in violation of the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty. They were criminal trespassers.
As it begins to become populated, it is, of course, desecration. Anything that goes up, including the highways, the cities, and is still desecration. Anything that is done to it by humans, and especially for exploitation purposes and to buy and sell, is totally sacrilegious.
They're raping our Mother Earth by digging, and they're contaminating our water. They don't have that bond the way we do with the Black Hills.
I went up to Leeds, South Dakota, right in the heart of the Black Hills, Paha Sapa. And I saw where they've relocated part of the town in order to strip mine for gold. It's a sadness. I feel a sadness for the white man. And he hasn't anything, no roots, no foundation. He's going to move his entire town. Homes where people died and were born.
The eagles up there flying around, they're watching constantly to see that this sacred land is preserved. The Great Spirit told the Lakota people that you're the keepers of this land. That's the reason the Lakota people cry when this land is desecrated by mining, by cutting trees down. Pretty soon there won't be nothing here.
In In 1876, the government decided that they would purchase the Black Hills. And they sent an agreement out to the various Sioux agencies to get the requisite number of signatures for a cession. No cession of Sioux territory would be valid unless 3/4 of the adult male member Sioux Indians agreed to it.
The commission was successful in gaining only 10% of the nation's adult population. And our later investigation of those 10% is that many of those people that signed were not even Lakota. And the Lakotas that did sign did so under extreme duress.
The government was in a predicament because on the one hand the Sioux refused to sell their sacred lands, and on the other hand the miners and the settlers were demanding a cession. So Congress broke the impasse by enacting the so-called agreement into law.
They said, well, all the Indians have to stay only in that part of western South Dakota, excluding the Black Hills. For now, that's their reservation. It's going to be called the Great Sioux Nation.
In consideration for the confiscation of the Black Hills and Sioux territory, the United States would provide the Sioux Indians with all aid necessary for civilization.
We were put on reservations, and we had to depend on government rations. Skinny cows brought up from Texas, the Texas Trail drives. Flour that was infested with weevils. Bacon that was rancid.
What we were issued was certainly inadequate to make the adjustment from the buffalo to the cow, forced a dependency upon the United States government.
When the government took us away from our buffalo, they almost killed all of us.
The analogy that I think of in terms of Indians suddenly being confined to very small land areas called reservations would be if we were sent into outer space and suddenly had to live on an alien planet. The effect of the reservation policy itself was devastating in terms of the kinds of cultural changes that occurred in a very rapid period of time. The world basically took on a new dimension.
We're in disarray culturally. Our culture has become chaotic, and we're attempting to make an adjustment. And into this comes the sleaze of the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Indian agents, and their graft and corruption, skimming off of our supplies, selling them.
The agents required people to go out and do things that they were not used to doing. And it was just like being in prison on your own land.
You go out over here and you farm that. We never did farm in our lives, and here they ask us hitch up that oxen and plow that field.
You were forced to go out there just like slave labor and perform these tasks. Finally, in the early 1880s, the government decided that they wanted to take more Sioux territory. They proposed to take 9 million more acres from the Great Sioux Indian Reservation. They sent General George Crook out to Indian country, and Crook lived up to his name. He crooked the Indians out of their land. The government divided the Sioux Indians up onto smaller reservations to further divide and conquer them.
The United States government felt then that it had to completely change us. So they decided that they had to really make an assault on the spirit of the Indian. The land base had been eroded, and so now the Indian himself was going to be changed.
Like Christianity came in, and the government more or less make a deal with them to Christianize the Indian people.
The government was ruthless, working with the church in terms of its massive Christian campaigns. So they delegated the nomination of Indian agents to the various Christian denominations and essentially let the churches administer Indian affairs.
The dominant society, when they started building the schools, more or less like a prison, because they built fences around those schools and they put guards to, so that the parents wouldn't be able to see the children, or the children, were kept there as like hostages.
I was about 4 or 5 years old, and we had to go to a school called day school, Porcupine Day School. And while I was going to school there, when you're late or if you don't go to school, the policemen go get you and bring you to school. They punish you too.
One Indian agent is the one that formed his police force, and he appointed even officers. And these are the men that go around throughout the reservation rounding up children.
I finished 3rd grade there at Porcupine Day School. Then I went to a non-reservation school. When I got there, they took my clothes off and gave me issue clothes. We was in a military system. Everything we do is military. Then we cannot speak our language. They punish us for that. They make us do things. Sometimes we get a whipping. Yeah, with the blacksnake whip. It's devastating. We cannot wear long hair, and we can't wear moccasins. They take that away from us. We have to learn this English. Speak English. We cannot speak Indian inside the school. Everything we do, we've got to have a pass. So we go to the office and we ask for a pass. A whole bunch of us, Sioux. Then go way out in the hills where nobody sees us, nobody hears us. We take lunch with us, we sit in a circle, we talk Indian. That's how, today I'm still talking Indian. I didn't lose it. But my brother lost it all. My brother, he lost it all.
Over the years, the Sioux people made many, many trips to Washington, D.C. to get the government to hear their grievances over land claims.
Black Hills Treaty Councils had been formed as early as 1876 and continue to raise the same issues. The treaty, that no lands would be sold without a consensus of our people, that we're entitled to protections under the treaty, and that never was it ever thought that the property interest of the Black Hills would be relinquished.
Chief Red Cloud himself made many, many trips to Washington.
My grandpa, Red Cloud, first time he went to Washington was 1851. He don't read or write, talk English, but the mind he had for Lakota people. their life, the future. He got it from Tungashila, the Great Spirit, the Creator. Today in Washington, what he says is fighting it today.
For many years, the Sioux felt aggrieved because they had no judicial forum to hear their claims. Finally, they got Congress to pass a Special Jurisdictional Act in 1920. And in 1922, they hired a lawyer who filed all their claims for them, including the Black Hills claim. And he litigated these claims for a period of 20 years. In 1942, the Court of Claims dismissed the Black Hills claim. So the Sioux were right back where they started. A very valid case and no judicial forum to hear it.
In 1946, Congress established the Indian Claims Commission. Indian Claims Commission then took the case.
Indian Claims Commission Act provided that all Indian tribes with claims would have to file those claims within 5 years or lose them. The act placed the Indian tribes in a catch-22 situation because if they didn't file their claims within the 5-year period, they lost them. And if they filed, they lost their lands anyway because they could only accept monetary compensation for it. The Lakota people were placed in a situation where they had to sell their sacred lands, the Black Hills. And the Black Hills are not for sale. They cannot sell religious property. And that's the primary issue between the Sioux Nation and the United States government.
We know as Indian people that the mountains endure forever. Because the mountains are going to endure forever, those that came to live here feel that they have to make the imprint of their leaders by carving the faces of human beings into the natural landscape in the hope that they too will endure for all time.
I feel Mount Rushmore is the ugliest monument I ever saw. The people say that it's a symbol of the country, but I think the presidents up there, they took Indians and made them slaves and took their land away and put them on reservations, and here that the white society is honoring what they did.
Any kind of carving in the Black Hills is desecration. Every cubic inch is sacred. If I were to begin carving this land up, and it would be like graffiti on the tabernacle or in the sacristy or the most sacred place in the church.
If you look at those 4 individuals, they had a lot to do with everything that is negative in the experience of Lakota people. George Washington, was the first to violate any treaty. Thomas Jefferson's response to the so-called Indian problem was to annihilate them. Abraham Lincoln, on the same day he signed the Emancipation Proclamation, he also issued an order directing that 38 Dakota people be hung in Mankato, Minnesota. Teddy Roosevelt is the biggest thief to ever occupy the White House. He nationalized over 50 million acres of Indian land and called them national parks.
It's another example of the arrogance of those people that came to live with us, that they have to build their monuments to immortalize themselves. Well, they have demonstrated nothing but blatant disrespect for the natural landscape and the beauty of this country.
The decision was made by the American Indian movement to come to Mount Rushmore to demonstrate what the Black Hills represent to the Lakota people. They drug us off the mountain, literally, in handcuffs. Threw us in jail. We were charged with trespassing. Under the treaty, the Lakota people retained this territory as our own. It's been a continuous struggle to try to get that message across. Many different strategies have been tried. A lot of discussions were taking place with, especially with old people. And more, the chiefs and headsmen expressed their frustration in the federal government's failure to live up to its obligations. They asked the American Indian movement to come and try to do something about it. The decision was made to go to Wounded Knee. It was felt that a place of that power would be good because of the spiritual significance that existed there with the mass gravesite, which was a result of 1890 and the massacre that took place there. There was a lot of fear that people inside Wounded Knee would be overrun and massacred again.
Either negotiate with us for meaningful results, positive results, or you're going to have to kill us. And here at Wounded Knee is where it's going to have to happen.
The media was overcome by the drama, and so the message really didn't get out. The real meaning of the stand at Wounded Knee was basically to bring the issue of the Fort Laramie Treaty, to the table, and that we felt that if enough awareness could be generated, that the federal government would have to sit down with Lakota people and come to an understanding and an agreement on how to fulfill their obligations by treaty. The people inside of Wounded Knee, they faced all the power and might of the United States government. And for 71 days, they were able to hold them off. And it wasn't just because of the physical presence and the commitment of those people, but it was that spiritual strength that allowed us to maintain. Black Elk said that at Wounded Knee in 1890, the sacred hoop was broken, and it affected a lot more people than just those that were massacred. The pain that was experienced at that time carried on. Wounded Knee in 1973 was when that hoop began to mend.
The siege at Wounded Knee was the catalyst for the restoration of our pride and self-dignity, and therefore our rights.
And in 1980, the Supreme Court decided, yes, the U.S. government had treated the Indians in no more rank and dishonorable dealing than this nation's history can ever disclose. And at that point, it was a victory in the sense that the U.S. government admitted they had done something wrong. But then in turn, they limited the claim to money damages only, which was a shock to the Lakota people who were involved with the Black Hills claim. In 1980, the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council passed a unanimous resolution rejecting any money dealing with the Black Hills claim.
They rejected $105 million, the largest settlement of any Indian land claim in the United States of America. It's now almost up to $400 million, with interest and everything. And we still won't take it.
I didn't want my grandchildren to ask, how did we lose those Black Hills? Did you just take the money, grandmother?
The Sioux Indians realized that they're going to have to reach some type of a settlement for the occupied lands, about 6 million acres. On the other hand, they are going to demand that the federally held lands be returned to them.
The issues that existed in 1877 continue to this day. We seek a legislative solution at this point. Congress has to remedy the situation. It has to fulfill its obligations to the first Americans in this country.
A bird flew out of the Black Hills when there was nobody around. And the bird told the medicine man that they will be back if the Indians ever get their land back, this Black Hills. In my time, I don't think I will see that, but I want my children, my grandchildren to see that, and that be the truth.
But the buffaloes are coming back now. It's got a new generation, new awakening. It's coming back now.
It's been over 100 years. 100 years of deprivation, of negative statistics, of reservation lifestyle and living conditions. We've endured this. And now we're in the 7th generation. This is a very significant part of our whole history. This generation now has the responsibility of seeing to it that our next 7 generations survive and live.
To me, the Black Hills mean everything. They represent where I'm from, and I think they'll help me to where I'm about to go. I am the 7th generation that Red Cloud spoke about, and I want my Black Hills back.
My grandfather and I used to come here, and he's always told me that this is your land. You hang on to it. So I'd like to see my children hang on to it.
I think we're going to get it back if we all stand together as one nation like we did before. When we had our Sundances, we all came together. It's like a magnet pulling you here. You know, you get attracted to the hills. And just by looking at them 100 miles away, you can feel the spirit that these hills have.
We lost a lot of warriors to try to keep our land and our Black Hills. Today, we just look at it. Sometimes older people, tears comes out. It's hard to be Indian because this land, we have a hard time to get it back. That's how I feel. Is I hope that dream is come true for our people.
My father always said, we own these hills. These hills are ours. They belong to us. I buried him in the Black Hills. As I placed him in the grave and they were singing his praise song, I heard his voice in my ear, and he was always a great joker. And he said to me, at least I got back 6 feet of it. And he met the Black Hills. So that's how much the Black Hills mean to my family.
When we all forget about our deficits and we all come together in unity in one voice, we're going to get it back. We're going to live again the way we used to live before. That's how important that is. We're going to rise again as human beings.
It may not happen in my lifetime. It probably won't happen in this century. I cannot say when that will happen, but we know also from the prophecies of our own people that we will survive. We're masters at survival.
Lakota